everybody to Dr. Daniel Bendor, who's going to talk to us about calmly coping with COVID. And thank you very much, Dan, for coming again to speak to us.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk. It's one of my hobbies. Okay, so to begin with, in light of our uniquenesses, right? Every one of us is different. There's no general coping mechanism, right? It is truly a matter of different strokes for us different folks, right? It's a different package of coping mechanisms. The basic point is, given resilience and creativity, coping is possible. I think an incredible example of that was Judy Engel's mom last week, a rather impressive person, I thought. I'm going to divide it into biological, psychological, social mechanisms, but Carla corrected me and suggested I do it in reverse order, because I tend to get sort of, I guess in some ways I know more about biology and psychology, but I spend too much time on the biology, I won't have time for the other stuff. So I'll say a few words about physical stuff, biological stuff, but that, if you want me back, I can give a whole talk on physical exercise for us senior citizens, as well as nutrition for us senior citizens. In the question and answer, it'd be interesting to hear what different people have faced and solved. Okay, so let me go to the, and it's, I call it social or really relational coping. First of all, forget the foolish term social distancing, right? I don't know who in heaven's name ever came up with that. But as you may have noticed, if you listen to CNN, there is a physician, she's a member of Biden's COVID team, she's an epidemiologist. She doesn't talk about social distancing, she talks about physical distancing, right? Loneliness has a remarkably destructive effect on our health, right? So we certainly have to relate. In that, I want to just note, we were talking before about Myrna getting a pet, and I have thought that if I were single for a year or so, I would get a dog. We've had both dogs and cats, but I just think dogs are more relational critters than cats are. I'm not dissing cats. I know there's some that are very, very nice and warm and occasionally affectionate, but I would get a dog. Okay. We need to distance physically, but socially be close, which we can do with technology, like some of the things that we know well and are, I think, coming to love: Zoom, tablets, phones, TV, and doing things on the games on the computer, mahjong and bridge, as Ira has been helping me with for over a year now. We must discipline ourselves not to hug our friends, and certainly not our grandkids who are in school or seeing their friends in person. And my thinking, now that I don't mean to sound cold or uncaring, but my thought is I'd rather not hug them for a year and maybe have 10, 12, 15, 20 years to hug them. So that's why I say that. We can read to them on Zoom or play a game, but not hugging. In terms of social stuff, one of our friendship groups called the khabara, which is a modification of the Hebrew word for chaber, which is friend, is now meeting weekly versus every other month before COVID, which is amazing. Now, another thing to cope with is giving to others in a careful way. So let me tell you a story. I don't know if I told it before, but I think it's amazing. So I have this favorite Indian restaurant, which is my favorite restaurant on the planet. I've probably gone close to 700 times. And you say, Dan has gone around the bend. Who goes to a restaurant 700 times? And the answer is, I do. And I'll explain to you how. It's been open about 14 years. Before COVID, I averaged once a week. A better week was twice a week. An even more good week was 3 times a week. And occasionally I went 4 times a week, you know, having meetings with different folks. I never went alone. I was, you know, met people, had meetings. Carla said to me, how can you eat Indian food 4 times a week? And obvious answer is Indian people do. Maybe I'm part Indian, but in any event, so that's my favorite restaurant on the planet. And I was worried about his not surviving the shutdowns, because remember, our favorite restaurants are not getting alcohol business, which is one of the greatest sources of income to restaurants, and they're not getting that. So I called him up a bunch of months ago, April, and I said, Raj, I'm worried about you. How about if I give you till this is over and we're back in the restaurant, how about if I give you $100 a month to just help you survive, and then you'll be there when it ends? And he said in his British Indian accent, he said, did I tell this before? Did I tell this vignette? Okay. He said, Dan, I'm doing fine. Give it to somebody who needs it. I don't need it, which I thought was rather amazing and very sort of generous of him, because if he hadn't said that, I would have given him the money. Another thing I've started doing, and I think I got the idea from something when Carla and I were out in the Bay Area 49 years ago. There was a columnist, Herb Cain, in the San Francisco Chronicle, and he talked about paying the toll for somebody behind him when he crossed the Bay Bridge. And I thought that was sort of neat, but I never did it myself. Can't do that with a transponder now, but I never did it when I paid cash. But what I am doing now is I'm giving a COVID, I tell them it's a COVID tip to my favorite food stores. If you think about it, it's kind of interesting. When we go to a restaurant, we get one meal and we tip, depending on the service, 10, 15, 20%. I go to my health food store or Scott's in East Lyme, the Apple store, and they provide me with 10 meals. And so I've decided during the time of COVID, I'm just giving them a little tip. At first, the young people at Scott said, no, but Mrs. Scott was nearby and she said, yes, I could do it. So if it floats your boat, if it suits your circumstances, the smile on people's faces when you do it is quite impressive. So it's a nice thing to do. It's also not mindless altruism, but I think enlightened self-interest to tip generously at your favorite takeout. Given, it said recently in the day, 600 restaurants in Connecticut have already closed, and the restaurant slaughter is not over, because it's not simply that people aren't allowed to fill up a restaurant, but people apparently are also scared to go into restaurants. I know I am. I wouldn't go into a restaurant till months after I have my vaccine and see how it's working. Once we're safely vaccinated, we can volunteer in person. Before vaccination, for those of us who are over 65, which is a good chunk of the folks on now, I think it's too dangerous given our age. But after we have our vaccines and we see that they're working, then we could do various kinds of volunteer things. The other thing is, Carla reminded me, I've been saying over and over again how easy it is to go to services. Okay, I mean, and also to lunch and learn with a rabbi on alternate Thursdays. I think it's the first and third Thursday of each month. I see Kathleen nodding. And I've been impressed with the services, the programs, and the turnouts that we've been having. Clearly, especially dark Friday afternoons, we have unquestionably more folks tuning into services on Friday evening, Shabbat evening, than we did when we were doing it in person, even when it wasn't a dark time. And this also will get back to things we can be thankful for, which I'm going to turn to in a little bit. Finally, with climate change, I suspect there'll be sunny days in the 50s when we can meet in driveways or on decks for lunch. And I know one of our friends, Pat and Jim, got a heating thing to make it even more feasible. You too? You got it? Joel, you guys got it? Cool. By the way, we've already had one such day. So the thing to do is check the forecast and schedule a lunch with friends when it works. Let me just.
Dan, you bring the merch masala. We'll supply the heat.
That's a deal. Okay. Now let me talk about some psychological stuff. First, let me just say the one cautionary thing. I know Kathleen wanted in the depths of this dark, difficult winter for me to be more upbeat. And generally, this will be more upbeat. The only caution, I'll say one cautionary thing, and that is for those of you who get the day or want to Google it, there was a thought-provoking I agree with Carla, scary article called, this was on Sunday, this past Sunday, sorry, but vaccine won't make this go away. Okay, did anybody, I see Reva's nodding. Did you see that article, Reva? Okay, but it's thought-provoking, and the reason I mention it is I'm always concerned about building up expectations and then people having more distance to crash. So it's a thought-provoking article. Okay, so first, I wrote this before I saw that article, but first, take the long view. I'm guessing, notice I said guessing, not betting, I'm guessing that we return to some semblance of normal with vaccines in 8 to 12 months. Though I think I've said, I'm not holding my breath that I'm going to be in services for the high holidays. But we'll just have to see. Again, as I said, the prior two talks, there's so much we don't know. Therefore, we just have to see how things unfold. And that's also true in light of this new strain that seems to be an issue around the world. New strain of the virus. Also, I think it's important to keep a sense of perspective. With tens of millions of Americans losing jobs, homes, or apartments, and not having enough food, virtually all of us are more fortunate. I haven't heard of congregants losing their homes or apartments or things like that. And so that is something, we don't have to feel guilty about it, but we can certainly take comfort in that. Now, we humans like predictableness. Routine is soothing. Now, the problem is our routines have been upended, whether it's visiting children and grandchildren, name a routine, and it's been likely upended. If you went to the gym in the morning, so the answer is build new ones or modify old ones. So if you went to the gym in the morning, exercise at home with simple tools. Let me show you some simple tools. So therefore, at least my way of looking at things, when we get back to taking vacations, you can take a vacation. So this is tubes, okay? And a set of them, one of them is about, I don't know, $12, $14, and the handles are interchangeable. So you can take a couple different resistance of tubes, and you can do things like you can sit on the tube and do bicep curls. You can sit on the tube and do shoulder presses. So they're neat things. They're also things that you can put around your legs.
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
just a note of caution. When you're looking away from the computer, we can't hear you.
Pardon me. They're neat. Thank you, Kathleen. They're neat things and eminently portable and quite inexpensive. There are also bands like these, which you can put around, let's say, your legs and do some activities. This is not really a band. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's thinner than a band, but it's a wonderful device. And finally, I had taken 40 years off of doing push-ups because they were hurting my wrists. Because how do our cousins, the chimps, walk? Who knows? Carla's laughing at me. Okay, I don't see any hands going up. They walk like, to my knowledge and my memory, they walk like this, on their knuckles, but with their wrists straight. As you know, if you're doing a push-up on the floor against the wall, your hand is bent in an abnormal position. And it was hurting me. I didn't like it. Then somebody, I don't know, somebody told me about this handy little device. Okay, it's a handle, and you can do push-ups with it, and your wrist is in what we call the anatomical position, i.e. straight, not bent the way it should not be. So those are some of the things you can do using your own body weight and those simple tools, and you can get a fabulous workout. The only other thing I would add is dumbbells. I didn't bring you one because you know what those are. I'm not talking about barbells, the long thing. I'm talking about the individual dumbbells that you can do stuff with. And they're relatively cheap, and they will last to your great-grandchildren. You just can pass them down the generations. And there's no reason for us not to do that. But that's I'm veering into the biological. Okay, so resume a hobby that you've not long done. Take courses online. 2 questions. Who has watched something on book TV? Don't all raise your hands at once. Actually, nobody's raising your hands. Okay, for those of you who are willing to read nonfiction, Book TV is on C-SPAN 2 on the weekends from 8 a.m. Saturday morning till 8 a.m. Monday morning, unless Monday is a holiday, in which case it's 8 a.m. Tuesday morning. And they have authors talking about their books. It's a wonderful introduction to see if a book looks tempting to you. And you can tape it and watch it whenever you wish. And how many have gotten courses from the Great Courses Company, or what used to be called the Teaching Company? Okay. Again, of the faces I see, let's see, I don't know if there's anybody else here, but of the faces I see, nobody has. And that's something to know about, because they have fascinating courses. They go all over the US to colleges and universities, and they tape folks who are rated outstanding professors at their various campuses in different subjects: humanities, natural sciences, social sciences, arts, and they're wonderful. You can stream them if you're technologically less anxious than I. You hear that, boo-boo? And you can also get them on DVDs, and you can either watch them upstairs. We have the largest TV in our home is in our basement gym, and so when we're exercising, we watch things like that. But the Great Courses Company is really quite something. If you go online now for the Great Courses Company, I think up until the 30th or the 31st, their courses are on significant sale. So it's something just to check. I think if you Google the Great Courses or Great Courses, you'll find it. Okay. Carla has taken a Chinese art class on Zoom through New London Adult Ed, and has come up with some amazing drawings of Chinese birds and also the koi fish. Now, something that psychologists discuss is what's called an attitude of gratitude. I'm not in denial, I don't think, but we do have things for which we can be grateful. Interestingly, a little while ago, the New York Times has this thing called, I think it's they call it memoir in 6 words. And people in 6 words have to say something that they're grateful for. And 10,000 people submitted things all across the spectrum. One person was grateful for Trump. Another person was grateful for Biden. And it was really quite fascinating to read the varying things that people could find to feel gratitude for. Who are you? Oh, okay. So what do people think we can feel grateful for now? Now this, I expected to see at least a hand or 2 go up. What can we be grateful for now? Anyone? Rena, unmute yourself, and then Pat. Unmute yourself, Rena. Okay, yes, Rena.
I was grateful for the weather today. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yes, it was.
And I was able to walk on the beach, on the sand, and it was heaven.
Yes, good point. Good point. I think that is, the notion that we can only be grateful for large, expansive things like a cruise or something, which many of us are not going to be doing for quite a while, I think that's true. That's a great example. Pat?
I was going to say our health.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. That, thank heavens, I don't know that we know anyone who has suffered. I mean, in our social network, I have a wonderful, lovely patient who died of COVID, but in my social network and in my relatives, touch wood, nobody. Myrna.
Yes, Netflix and Amazon.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One for the shopping, the other for the amazing movies and TV shows, and it's incredible. Did somebody else have a hand? Reva. Unmute yourself, Reva. No, still muted. Still the little red thing is there. Can you touch it on your screen?
Left hand.
Okay, Reva, you're unmuted.
I'm grateful for my neighbors who watch out for me now that Mel isn't here. And one of them gives me books to read because I can't, we talk across the driveway or across the street. But the library's closed. You can pick up books outside the library. But I think
That's,
it's nice to
it's
have.
harder.
My neighbor on the other side just passed away, so
Oh,
Where did she live?
sorry.
yeah, I'm grateful for my neighbors.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Anybody else with some?
I didn't know came forward and offered help. My handyman called me, and I hadn't used him in a year. And he said, I'm going to the market. This was in March. He said, can I get you something? I said, well, I have a list, and I haven't been too successful ordering online because they either substitute the wrong thing or you tell them no substitutions, and then you don't get what you need. So he shops for me every week.
Every week going forward.
Or
Oh.
every other week if I don't need anything.
That's a blessing. Artie, then Joelle, and I'm not sure if Rita was trying to say something. Artie?
Well, I heard somebody mention good health, but definitely I think we need to be very thankful for having this vaccine come our way. I'm hopeful for that. And that gives me a good feel of gratitude. It's a little bit like a miracle.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's a little bit like a miracle. This vaccine is starting to be injected 10 months after we figured out what its genetic code was, and we still don't have a vaccine for HIV 40 years later. So you're right, Artie. I agree completely. It's a miracle. Joelle?
I was just going to say I'm thankful that I have a job that is conducive to working from home and that I'm allowed to work from home. I've been working from home since the middle of March. I've not set foot back in my office. Had I realized it would be this long, I might have emptied my water bottle and cleaned up a little bit in my office. But I'm really lucky that I'm able to continue to bring in income without endangering myself and endangering this guy next to me. So very, very lucky.
Excellent, excellent, excellent point. The beauty of this is that people are bringing up things that I didn't think about, but you're absolutely right. And I'm doing the same thing. Carla was prematurely retired because she wasn't appropriately not comfortable going in to teach in a college Petri dish without a vaccine, given her age. And you and I are able to work without risk to ourselves. Did somebody else have a gratitude? Ellen, unmute.
I'm grateful I dropped a watermelon on Ivan. Because otherwise we never would have been able, we wouldn't have known he had the blockage.
Oh, really?
Well, I made him pick up a watermelon and it sort of rolled into his chest, his ribs, and he knew it was a rib, injury, but he went into the ER and they weren't busy. And they ran some tests, and from there it led to more tests, and he had blockage. And then he had bypass from it.
Okay, talk about
Never had any symptoms before that, ever.
Unbelievable. Talk about
no shortness of breath, nothing.
Chest pain, nothing.
Never.
Wow, that is incredible. Ira.
I'm very grateful for Dr. Fauci, because where would we be without him?
Yes, though I will say I finally have come up with a point of disagreement with him. Anybody have a guess what that is?
Travel ban.
What?
The travel ban?
Yes, who said that?
SEMA.
Yes, exactly. Why we don't have a travel ban at this point is utterly beyond me. It makes no sense that I can figure out, and I am not eccentrically alone in that. There's a retired Harvard professor who was talking on CNN, and his comment was he respectfully disagrees with Dr. Fauci on this. But that's one point. You're right, Ira. I think he is incredible. And I think Biden thinks so too, because he's going to be a part of the new team, beyond question. I can't tell. If there's a hand signal, does that mean somebody?
Seema has her hand up. Seema.
Oh, Seema. Okay.
Everybody has wonderful, wonderful gratitudes. Mine is a very small one. My cleats worked really well on the ice this morning.
No, that's not so small. That's not so small because that's hugely important because at our age, busting bones is not a good idea.
No.
So no, that's a gift that keeps on giving over time because we'll have other icy days. So I think that's fabulous. Okay. Anyone? I can't tell. I see Artie with a symbol of a hand. Does that mean anything, or is that something he already spoke? Okay, let me go on. Okay, but that was an impressive. Oh, Art, did you want to say something, Artie? You're muted. You're muted. You're still muted.
I am thankful for Glide.
What that means is if the temperature and the humidity and whatever aren't right in cross-country skiing, we get clumps, the dreaded clump, which means you get lumps of snow under your ski, and instead of gliding sort of like a water bug, you're sort of marching like a spastic snowshoer. And that's what Artie means when he said he's grateful for Glide, because we've had fantastic Glide.
I thought he was talking about dental floss.
That's what
Who said that? Very good, Myrna. Very good. Okay. So my list is puny in comparison. A couple of things I thought of related, one of the things to what Iris said. The science knowledge we have for both prevention in terms of wearing masks and physical distancing, as well as the vaccine technology, which, as Artie said, is miraculous. And other kinds of technology, as I said, Zoom, tablets, phones, TV, mahjong, bridge online, as long as it's not overdone in terms of sitting, which is in itself, a great deal of sitting is again toxic. So that when Ira and I are online with this bridge master, between every hand, I get up from my chair and sit down, up and down, at least 12 times. So that now I know if you do it even 3 times, it's better than just sitting. Another thing I'm grateful for are e-readers, and so many people who are trying to help with health, with our health and our food supply, right? As well as what Pat said, interestingly, our health, just the fact that we are healthy. Okay, I think, let's see, where do we, oh, good. So now I can say a little bit about biology because, no, I think what I'll do, so I'll just talk very, as I say, superficially about some biologic stuff. So for years, I used to think that aerobics stuff, getting your heart rate up, that's what was important in physical fitness. But I knew at some level that strength training was also important. And the reason strength training is important, something I didn't realize till recently, is starting in our 40s, without any strength training, we can lose 1 to 2% of our muscle mass every year. Okay? That means that people eventually, older people eventually get to the point where they have trouble with their grocery bags. Okay? And that's starting somewhere in the 40s. So strength training is another very significant component. And with those things I showed you, it's very easy, those little tools I showed you, it's very easy to do strength training. The only additional thing is that in our basement, we have a bunch of dumbbells, which we use. But 2 other things that, again, I didn't think about are flexibility, which means stretching, and balance. And just one thought about stretching, that when you're stretching, if you're trying to touch your toes, don't do it standing up, I think. My stretching and strength training stuff was given to me by my physical therapist, the one who put Carla and me, help after the surgeons put us together. He helped us get back on our feet. Well, as did Sandy, who put us up at his apartment. So the physical therapist gave me a whole set of exercises, and I've divided them up into upper body and lower body. I have, you can't read it, but trust me, it fills up most of the sheet. Anybody who wants a copy of it can just call me with their, and I say call me because that's the thing I check most, call me with your email it and give me your email address, and I will email you a copy. One of the I didn't explain what all the exercises are. Most of them are self-explanatory. One of the things you can do if you want to learn about exercises is you can Google specific exercises. So there's an exercise called a plank, which is you're on your forearms and your body is straight like a plank, so that there's a straight line between your shoulders, your butt, and your heels. Okay, not like this, not tented at your tail, but a straight line. And it's a very excellent core exercise. So I looked on on Google for planks, and it came up with 20 different kinds of planks. Okay, many of them are not what I would consider doing because they look a little too tough. I'm doing okay with simply what's called a front plank on both forearms, or a side plank on one forearm on your side. The one thing you have to be careful of is, interestingly and surprisingly, form is not always correct. Thank you, Boo Boo. Form is not always correct on these things, and I found that very surprising. But you have to, if you have a question about that, you could check with a physical therapist. Is the person most likely David Doyle? Disclosure, no kickbacks, but David Doyle is the physical therapist I use when I have pains and need some help. But I forgot to mention some other things about sort of general health stuff. One, for folks our age, hydration is something that is very easily overlooked. I don't know why it is, but I'm pretty sure my physician colleagues can correct me, but as we get older, somehow our sense of thirst diminishes. I don't know the mechanism. Obviously, there's no evolutionary reason for it, because by the time we're our age, we're not reproducing anymore. So it has no bearing on human success. But hydration is something very important. And I find it's very hard, as I say, because a sense of thirst is not clear. I just have now 3 28-ounce bottles of water every day. And then on top of that, I have other things, 10 ounces of water to take my bedtime meds, yogurt, kefir, fruit, vegetables. But I think in hospitals, we measure what we call input and output. I think for us outpatients, we only need to measure input, what we take in. And it's talked about, 64 ounces is talked about as some magic number. Apparently, there's no research backing that up. It varies. If I get 64 ounces only, it's not enough for me. I require at least 90. Part of that may be because of exercise, but I don't sweat much, so I don't know why it is, but that's what I require to be in good shape. Sleep, there's a mythology that as we get older, we don't need as much sleep. As far as I know, I have no evidence for that neurologically. What happens is as we get older, it's easier for us to have broken sleep, whether because of sleep apnea or other factors. But we still need sleep. I think a minimum is 7 hours. Some people can get away with less, but I think 7, 8, 8.5, and your body will tell you. If you're finding yourself falling asleep early in the evening when you're watching a show, then maybe you're not getting enough sleep, or you might have sleep apnea. And if you have a bed partner, they can often tell, because they may hear you just stop breathing for a period of time. And then you should get tested for that, because as our continuing medical education lecture reminded us within the past few months, sleep apnea is not a trivial matter. And final point is eating healthfully. Let me just say a few words about that, and then we will open it up for questions and comments. When I talk about eating healthfully, I'm not talking about diet, as that's a temporary phenomenon. I'm just talking about eating healthfully. And the best brief memory aid is the author Michael Pollan. He says, eat food, by which he means what your grandmother would recognize as food, not something that's processed out the kazoo. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. 7 words that if you follow that, you will be well on the road to health. The other thing that I have created is what I call the test of the veggie. Now, I prefer chocolate to vegetables. And I'm guessing I'm not the only one who has that preference. But I know, especially late in the evening, if I want to eat and I'm not willing to have sugar snap peas, baby carrots, celery, something like that, then it's emotional eating. It's not true hunger. It's a desire. It's not hunger. So that's a test you can apply to yourself. If you only want to eat Lenny's babka, then you know that yes, your taste buds are intact, but you're not necessarily hungry. It's just Lenny's babka tastes delicious. Okay. Oh, and so be careful about processed carbs. The simple mnemonic is, if it's white, don't bite. If it's brown, go to town. Okay? Because then you're not dealing with these anemic processed carbs. Mainly, the thing to eat is the Mediterranean diet, which you can Google. And there are a couple books titles of which I can email you. One excellent one by a physician is What the Heck Should I Eat? And a couple of books about nutrition and exercise are the Younger Next Year books. So there's Younger Next Year, which was the first. Then there's the second was Younger Next Year for women. And then another relatively recent book is Thinner Next Year, or Thinner This Year. And I think it's Thinner This Year. And that looks to be very good, though I haven't read it. I can't recommend it. But I suspect it's good because I've read several other in the series. Oh, I forgot to mention about planks and how the body changes. So Carla, when we first started doing push-ups, couldn't do a push-up. Did I mention? I don't know if I mentioned that. She couldn't do a push-up to save her life. So she did knee-ups for a while. And then after knee-ups, she did a couple of push-ups. Now she's up to 12, and occasionally she squeaks out 14. And she couldn't do a single one. Similarly with me, when my physical therapist 10 years ago told me about planks, I could do it the first time for 7 seconds. Then I started doing them. And a couple of years ago, Harriet Julie told me that she did a front plank for 5 minutes. I thought to myself, not being competitive or anything, I thought to myself, dang, if Harriet can do that, I got to try it. It wasn't the most fun thing I've ever done, but it was doable. So the difference between first doing 7 seconds and collapsing and then doing 5 minutes and collapsing is a testimony to how the body changes if we work it. And the same for Carla's push-ups. Okay, I think I am done for that for now. As I say, putting in a plug for myself. If you want, I can give a whole talk on physical fitness and training and stuff like that, and also one on nutrition. But now, questions, comments of any kind. Romana.
So I just want to mention something about the food that the Michael Pollan 7-word thing. In his book, he gives a very easy way to remember what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. If you picture the supermarket, the things on the perimeter of the supermarket are what he considers real food. And they're on the perimeter because they're stocked much more often. They're fresh produce, right? There's the dairy food. There's, if you just picture what's on the perimeter, pretty much all of that is real food.
Yes, excellent point. Yes. I don't know why they do that.
I think it has to do with stocking, that it's easier to stock around the outside circle.
Okay. But yes, that's true. I mean, I can think ShopRite, Stop and Shop. Absolutely. It definitely is where the real food is. Yeah. And Michael Pollan has some interesting books. He has a little brief book that has 50 tips on healthful eating. And then he has what was it? The Omnivore's Dilemma, I think, and another book. He's very easy to read. He's interesting. He's fun. He's worth taking a look at, given that we all
Dan,
have. Yeah.
Dan, I just want to point out that your white-brown dichotomy, chocolate is brown.
Oops. Okay, so let me speak to that. So I wasn't speaking of milk chocolate first, which is much higher in sugar. Okay.
I don't eat milk chocolate, just the real stuff.
Right. The real stuff is the dark chocolate. Interestingly, an amazing thing with me, my brother, my son, for all my exercising over the years, I could never get my high dense HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol, above 40. Okay. And that was ridiculous. Okay. I know there are people who don't exercise a toe and they have higher HDLs than I did. After 7 months of dark chocolate, my HDL went up to 47. And after another 7 months, my HDL went up to 54. At 47, Jeff Tannenbaum told me, lab error. So I stayed on it another 7 months, and it went up to 54, which I never, or 56. I never had that in my life. So that's what Romana is referring to as the real chocolate. And it's an acquired taste, I grant you. I used to think it was impossibly bitter, but after 20 years with no Hershey's, now Hershey's for me is pretty darn sweet. And I only have these tiny little bars that you get at Halloween. But I have a measured amount of dark chocolate every night. After we get off, I will have my little bar of dark chocolate, and it's a wonderful treat. Oh, yes. I'm talking about percentage. Carla reminded me the percentage of dark chocolate is at least 70, as far as I know, to get the benefit. That's the percentage. Now I eat on a multi-workout day, I have 70%, which has more sugar. And on a one workout day, I have 85% because that has less sugar. But somewhere in that zone, and it also, I was afraid that it would reactivate my atrial fibrillation. Some recent research came out saying it actually is protective, and I haven't had atrial fibrillation in years, but I also take magnesium. Okay. Other comments, questions, critiques, whatever. Romana. Oh, no. Okay. That's, oh, yes, Riva. Unmute there. Yes, Riva.
I never acquired a taste for chocolate. Do not, I can't bear it.
Really? Are you both milk chocolate and dark chocolate?
What kind of chocolate? My mother was a chocoholic. She had candy all over the house, hoping I would learn to like it. But I never could learn to like it.
Well,
and I didn't have any caffeine, so what could I have instead of that?
Well, what would you want instead of 4?
I don't like sweets, first of all.
You have something else to be grateful for, Rita.
I like salty things, though, so I have to be careful of.
Yes. You at this point we have to be careful with our blood pressure and stuff. Yeah. But actually, not liking sweets, it makes life simpler. Okay, I say I've never met a sugar molecule I didn't like.
My husband's that way too.
Yeah. So if you don't have that struggle, that's
like
just.
Fruit, though. I like fresh fruit, which has sugar.
Yes, but you don't get anywhere near as much sugar in fresh fruit, and you get a bunch of healthful nutrients as you would in a Hershey bar.
The only time I buy sugar is in the summer for the hummingbirds. I make my own hummingbird stuff.
Excellent.
Riva,
yes.
if you get like 80% dark chocolate, it's not really sweet, and you can get it with salt.
Yeah, it's not just the sweetness. It's I don't know. It's when people eat lemons and they go like that.
Yes.
That's what.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna, that's fine. You don't need to. But I was just gonna mention one other thing that I'm really grateful for, and that I hope that everybody is taking time for. Now that we have more time on our hands, Chuck and I both have been so grateful for the opportunities to observe nature. My relationship to birds and to trees and to creepy crawly creatures and whatever is so much greater than it used to be, and I love it.
Excellent. I'll get to you, Myrna, in a moment. Excellent point. Thank you for reminding me that one of the things I recently read about is something called an awe walk, AWE, an awe walk. I see some heads going up and down. And that involves being mindful when you're walking of not just powering through your walk, but looking at the clouds, looking at the trees, looking at plants, looking at birds. I don't know if it has to do with our being sort of locked down and not so much outside, but this year, for the first time ever, and then we started feeding them, for the first time ever, we had Baltimore Orioles on our back deck. We'd never seen them in 40 years or 35 years. All of a sudden, we had Baltimore Orioles. We had another small little bird that I identified through a Cornell website. If you go to, I think it's birds.cornell.edu, they have a wonderful system for identifying birds. They say, what's your zip code? Where did you see the bird? At the shore, on a tree, on the lawn. They give the approximate size. They start with a sparrow, and then they go to a robin, and then they have intermediate sizes. And it's a great site if you have any interest in birds whatsoever. But yes, thank you. And oh, by the way, also, I forgot to mention this. A couple months ago, there was in the Day a wonderful article about a woman who went to Norway for a bunch of years and came up with this wonderful phrase that the Norwegians have, and that is, there is no bad weather, only bad clothing. And I think it's an outstanding point. Kathleen can attest to that. Romana is nodding to it, that if you dress in layers, you can have a nice walk or a snowshoe or something, and you've got the little things on your shoes that Seema mentioned. You can have a wonderful workout out of doors. I will share with you that a couple of weeks ago, one patient of mine I'm seeing in my driveway. Why? He's had a very deprived life. He isn't doing well. I'm not convinced I'm helping him significantly. He comes to my home once a month to get his ADD medicine, an addictive medicine prescription. I'm not wild about mailing. And I asked him, we had been meeting FaceTime, and I asked him. So we met out, last time we met outside in the driveway, far enough away from the road, and I can always see, and we stop talking if somebody comes. And it was 42 degrees with a wind of 11 or 12 miles an hour from the southwest, leading to a wind chill of 34. And the hail, little tiny hail, was coming down on my notes, so I had to close my notebook. But we managed for a half hour. We managed fine. We were dressed warmly enough. It was a little cold to take my gloves off and write, but I only mention that to prove the truth of the Norwegian adage. No bad weather, only bad clothes. Myrna.
Hey, Dan, go ahead.
Yes. Myrna.
Yeah, thank you. I wondered if you could, I don't mean to be a downer, but I wondered if you could also address grieving and loss issues during COVID, during quarantining.
Yeah, boy, that's a toughie, because it's tough enough, even though I said there's a relationship challenge to people being together all the time, but it's got to be a lot tougher, losing a partner, not having a partner, losing a partner. I think there is a crashing stillness in the home. And fortunately, I haven't had to deal with that. I think talking with the rabbi might help. I think he's clearly a very warm, menschy human being. I think talking with dear friends. There is, I don't know, is the what is it called? The Dinyan group, is that still meeting? Is that meeting via Zoom now? Okay, I see Harriet Julie nodding. So you might think about joining that. There are a number of women in that who are widowed. I don't have a quick, easy answer. I need, what's the? Yes, and Carlos reminded you, and staying in touch absolutely with friends and family, especially the empathic ones, who can have some imaginative sense of what one is going through. But it's got to be heartbreaking at any time, and more so now. That's about it's not a downer. It's a life issue. And I wish I had more to say right off the top of my head. But I think staying in touch relationally with as I said, friends and family is crucial. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Kathleen, you wanted to say something?
No, I thought you had forgotten Myrna, so.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, additions, deletions? That's true. I'm going to have to make, in the future, I'll have an exception when I say, you know, if it's white, don't bite. If it's brown, go to town. I'm going to make clear that in controlled portions, one can also go to town with dark chocolate. But okay.
Hey, Dan, what about volunteering? I guess that you could view this as self-serving, but but I have found because of volunteering, I have absolutely no time, and it's definitely helped during this period.
And am I right that you're volunteering via Zoom? You're not like going to the soup kitchen or something like that.
No, just doing the things that we do as a synagogue. I mean, there are a certain amount of, a couple of things are in person, like when we have a Shabbat meal, we have to go to the crossroads and pack up the meals. But that's the extent of the, physical part of it. But just, there are a lot of things that are done on the phone, and delivering food to people, things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I agree. As I said, and more stuff once we are comfortable that we are safely vaccinated. And that will take some time to know that. But yes, no, I think that's absolutely true. That's sort of under the category of what I said of giving to others. I think it does make you feel good. I enjoy it when, I give a COVID tip and somebody looks at me with puzzlement and then smiles. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Richie.
Dan, I would also add, oh, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I mean, I've always been grateful for having a nice guitar, but I'm even more grateful during this time to have that guitar. I love it. And I find myself enjoying it more than I ever have in my life.
Okay, and another example of the variety and uniqueness of people, right? That's the first. I haven't read that anywhere, Rich, in that New York Times column about a 6-word memoir, things that people are grateful for. No one talked about their musical instrument, but I would imagine, you said it. You said you're enjoying it more than you ever have, and that's extremely significant and a blessing. I think if somebody can play, like piano or something like that, I think that would be neat. But we know Richie can play guitar. Okay. I think we're going to break early so people can get to Minion. And I can go have my dark chocolate.
Well, Dan, thank you so much. You offered some very good tips to everybody, and we really appreciate you taking your time to talk to us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Most welcome.
Dan.
Thank you.
Happy to do so.